This conference will now be recorded.
This is probably the biggest group we've had so far.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
See, folks, we should be proud of ourselves. This is the biggest group we've had so far for pre-planning. Right. So Brad's coming back?
Yes.
Okay.
I know. Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Annette Gutierrez. I'm the Executive Director here at the Rio Grande Council of Governments. We are based in El Paso. Our service area covers the counties of Brewster, Culberson, Hudspeth, Jeff Davis, Presidio, and we also have Doña Ana County and Isola del Sur as member governments of our organization. And we have various jurisdictions that are also members of our council of governments, whether they're cities, water districts. We also have some school districts as well. And the main purpose of the council government is to give our communities a venue to provide opportunities for collaboration, partnership, and provide greater efficiencies in the work that they do for the citizens that they serve. And so one of the functions that we are now moving into is flood planning. We also manage the water planning group on behalf of Texas Water Development Board. And so the flood planning effort is similar in nature in terms of the approach. And one of the main differences between water planning and flood planning is just the service area itself. Flood planning has a greater footprint than what we do with water planning. So we're taking a look at a greater number of counties than we have previously. And so the Rio Grande Council of Governments is serving as a sponsoring entity for this initiative. We do have AECOM consultants, and they will be providing the technical assistance necessary to create a regional flood plan. And then we also have Richard Bagans, who's our planner. He's our point of contact with our development board. And so he is the ombudsman between all these various groups and getting the plan together and ensuring that the public has an understanding of what it is that their intentions are and how it is that you can be effective in providing your voice to this initiative. And so now I'm going to turn over to Richard, and Richard's going to discuss the pre-planning meeting, and that's going to give you a really good overview of what we are going to be looking at for the next several years in terms of ramping up to the final regional plan, which will then be lumped into the state plan. Is that all right, Richard?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll turn over to Richard.
All right, if you would head to the first slide, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Annette, for that introduction. Again, my name is Richard Bagans. I'm from the Texas Water Development Board, or the TWDB, out of Boston. And as a planner, I'm here to assist the Regional Flood Planning Group, which has been designated as the Upper Rio Grande Regional Flood Planning Group. It follows the basins of the Upper Rio Grande, and it cuts off right around Lake Amistad, I believe, and then it's the southern, the Lower Rio Grande is another region entirely. Like Annette said, this is just a pre-planning public meeting to kind of give you guys an overview of what to kind of watch out for over the next couple of years, and an emphasis on an opportunity for you to voice your concerns to all of our regional flood planning group members here physically present with us, as well as virtually online, so they can hear your concerns or ideas and thoughts. Next slide. So the pre-plan meeting, it is specifically a rule requirement that was also in the water planning process. The entire flood planning process, we are basing off of the water planning process, and every cycle, the public gets an an opportunity to listen to the public about how they want their regional planning group members to facilitate that next plan. Whether they are concerned about specific areas of the region, specific projects, or if they want to incorporate specific ideas as they're looking over all these requirements. Next slide. All right, so to tell you about what flood planning is. This is a first of its kind in the state and of what we know in the nation as well. We are doing a statewide flood plan, so taking a look at the entire state, because up until now, and it still largely will be locally controlled and locally driven. But we're working with the local communities now to gather all the data sets that we have across Texas, looking at all the flood projects that are going on across Texas and proposed, and then putting it together in a easy, digestible way for the public to consume on a statewide basis. This was because of the success of the water planning program being a bottom-up approach from 1997, which means it is region-focused. Pre-1997, it was very top-down, which means the state, the TWDB, we kind of gave you regulations and rules to follow. But 1997, it switched it up, so it's all about the regions made up of these volunteer members. They are running the show, and they put together their regional plans, which then we assemble and put in together for the state plan. The regions, as Annette was saying, the region for flood planning is a little bit larger for this because all the regions for flood planning are based on the actual river basins. Some of the larger basins are split up into upper and lower regions as well. Annette, are you? Oh well.
Tell me.
Just for them, it's cut off on the side, but it's okay.
Oh, you know what? I'll go ahead and bring it up like this. Okay.
Perfect.
All right.
So there's 15 different regions across the state. For water planning, the regions are a little bit different because they're more concerned about water resources and water availability. So they're looking at surface and groundwater. So the regions are based around the intersection of surface and groundwater supplies for that specific area. So going to a watershed approach, that is something that is fundamentally different about this flood planning program. One of the key tenets is that this is a transparent and public forward process. At every single meeting, it is a requirement for an agenda item to receive written public comment as well as live public comments that you would like to present to the group. As well as an emphasis on these pre-planning meetings as well at the beginning of each cycle. We are working towards the 2023 regional plans and then the 2024 state water plan. So these are the first plans that we are working to, which is on an accelerated cycle right now. Another emphasis on the public real fast is that all of our meetings are governed by the Open Meetings Act, so they are publicly posted with sufficient time on our websites, as well as meeting minutes are posted, and any public documents that are given out during the meetings, those are posted as well before the meeting happens. And all conversations between the members, if they are conversing about the flood planning process, there needs to be a quorum in the group setting and have a meeting set. So all action items being discussed will be discussed in public and for your input to be given as well. Next slide, please. Going again, the timeline, we are in the middle of 2021 now. it was last October that these groups were first identified and set for the initial group member regions. So for these first 6 months, 8 months or so, it's been largely administrative, getting the bylaws passed, filling empty vacancies, choosing your sponsor, the Rio Grande COG, choosing your technical consultant, AECOM. But now we are getting into the nitty-gritty technical details with the technical consultants now. Over the next 6 months, they are working to put together essentially the first half or so of the regional flood plan. So that first half is going to be due January 7th, 2022, in about 6 months, which is the technical memorandum, which is our halfway midpoint. Then they'll continue to work on the other half of the plan, evaluating projects, and submitting the draft regional flood plans on August 1st of next year. Those draft plans will be publicly posted for the public to comment on them as well. So you'll be able to review them before they are officially adopted. Then once it goes through the TWDB and public comment period, then the regions will go ahead and adopt their final plans and submit them to the TWDB January 2023. The TWDB, we will then compile all the data that all the regions submitted over the next couple months and compile it into the state flood plan due to the legislature the following year, so that they have it in time for their next legislative session that spring. Next slide. The key tasks of the regional flood planning groups, because this is the first of its kind effort, we're kind of getting just an idea of what information and data is out there. Largely, all of the floodplain maps are a patchwork of detailed and approximate studies. Some have floodplain studies done for FEMA and NFIP insurance. Some regions do not. Some local communities may have had other approximate studies done, or the TWDB, we put together an approximate digital layer as well that regions can use. So right now it's kind of just saying, where are we now in terms of data? And it's a patchwork of all this data. Then it's going to be saying, okay, where can we improve this data? And identifying the regions that need additional studies done. And then with the data set that we do have, analyze the existing conditions and the future flood risks going out 30 years into the future. The groups will also take a look at all the floodplain management practices across the entire region, all the communities. What are their ordinances over here? What are their regulations over here? What are you guys doing over there? And they'll kind of evaluate them, saying, what's working, what's not? And they will compile a list of recommended floodplain management practices for the communities around the region to use as a resource. The kind of bread and butter of this entire process are these recommended evaluations, strategies, and projects. These are ultimately, the goal of them is to reduce the loss of life to floods going into the future, and reduce flood risk and exposure to physical structures as well. So the evaluations are focused on who needs better data, who needs more up-to-date data. The strategies are kind of like the big ideas of, we want to focus on low water crossings in this specific area because it's public information and just proper signage, and all the projects underneath that then will be, we need a low water crossing here, 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 here. Or there needs to be a specific levee in this particular area. If you want to focus on nature-based solutions, you'll have that as a strategy And you can do it up in the El Paso region, or you can have it down in the Big Bend region. You can have these big idea strategies, which then the projects are implementable and they have a non-zero capital cost, which means they are fundable and buildable and implementable, of course. And when these projects are put into the plan, they will be eligible for potential future state funding to help assist those projects near completion. All of this together then goes into the regional flood plan, which honestly will probably be a very dense document, but it will be a first of its kind. And over the years, as water planning, we see them get better and better as the cycles go on. And so, but the entire goal is to have the communities around the region then use this regional flood plan as a resource to know, hey, I don't have the time to do a study for my area right now. I don't know what's best for my community. What do you guys recommend? What can I do for my community that is going to help us going into the future? So that is the large goal for this regional flood plan. Next slide, please.
Before you leave that,
yes, sir.
Can you comment on the 1% and 10% at the bottom?
Yes, sir. So in the picture up on the screen, we see the 1% annual chance floodplain, also known as the 100-year flood. When a 100-year flood, it is known that specific storm event has a 1% chance every single year to happen. So we're kind of moving into this percent annual chance terminology going forward. But that is outlined in the blue area right there. Then in the orange area, you see the 0.2 annual percent chance floodplain. That is essentially what people call the 500-year flood. But every single year, it could happen this year, it could happen next year again. But every single year, there's a 0.2% chance of having a storm event that produces enough water to flood that entire area. So that is outlined in the orange in the picture. And so the eventual long-term goal is to get digital maps and accurate maps for the entire region. Because even though we recognize a lot of the flooding is focused on the coastal regions of Texas, but flooding happens everywhere around Texas, in Marfa, in El Paso, everywhere. So we are still emphasizing that there are regions of the Upper Rio Grande that do not have studies done. And during this process, those areas will be identified, and it will be an initiative to help those areas get studies done. Next slide. Implementing different projects and strategies and solutions to reduce the risk of flood. There's two large kind of bucket categories that they can go into. They can go into structural solutions, or they can go into non-structural solutions. So some maybe nature-based solutions might be along the coast, planting mangroves to protect against storm surge and kind of mitigate all of that water coming in from the coast. It also stabilizes shorelines from erosion, etc. Nothing has to be built for that. So those kinds of solutions are non-structural, while the more engineering-focused structural solutions may be levees, or they may be off-channel reservoirs, or they may be dealing with building codes particularly. Filling in different low-lying areas. So there are different solutions that can happen that will take some engineering and some work, but also let nature take its course, and let's use nature to help mitigate and reduce the flood risk. Next slide, please. Emphasizing the importance of the public. every single meeting, there is an agenda item to receive public comments, and you're allowed to give oral public comments as well at every single region meeting. There, in the kind of middle of it, there's a specific meeting where the public is asked to specifically comment on the flood risk summary map to identify any flood risk map captured. So once we kind of collect all of the current maps out there in the region, we want you guys to come in here and say, oh, I know of this specific area actually flooding. Is there any can you guys find any legitimacy to and make sure that this map reflects that flooding that happens every single storm event. So there's a specific meeting for the public to comment on that. These public pre-planning meetings as well, this is your chance to have the group members listen to your thoughts, concerns, and directives you guys want to give them. As well as you guys get an opportunity to comment on the draft plan, like I said, next August, to comment on that draft plan before it is officially adopted. So every step of the way, this is supposed to be public oriented and transparent. So we rely heavily on you guys. Thank you so much for coming out and engaging in this process. You may not want to attend every single meeting, but by you being here and now being aware of what's going on, you can now tell your community members that may be interested or affected by floods. You can now encourage them to attend the meetings virtually if the meetings will be held virtually, and listen in on the meetings and give your public comment then. So every step of the way, the group members rely on you for your input. One last thing about the group members that I think I forgot to mention is that every single of the group members represent a specific interest category. So one person represents all the agricultural interests of the region, one person represents counties, one person represents municipalities, flood districts, water districts, small businesses. So each of these members have a duty to reach out to their interest categories and learn all they can about how are floods affecting their specific interest categories. And they're to be the voice for those communities in this flood planning process. And I think that is it. Next slide. All right, any questions for myself first, and then I'll open it up for if you guys want to start commenting towards the group or any additional questions. Any comments about the overall flood planning process to me? Yes, ma'am.
It's something as small as like this move in my front yard was. Is that something that is something to put back in?
Let me just real quick, Peggy asked, is something as small as my front yard keeps flooding, is that something that needs to be brought to your attention?
Right, and so once we compile all of the additional data, and if you see that you're inside the floodplain, the 1% or 0.2% annual chance, then you might not need to comment. But if you're not inside that, on any sort of local input data that the data currently doesn't have, is on. We want to hear that. And then the technical consultants will do a little bit more background work to see if it is valid, and they'll rerun the models to see how that specific pain point can be incorporated into the maps. Yes, sir.
Do you want to speak loud, Brad, so they can hear you in the virtual world? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, pay attention to what I'm going to tell you. For 10 years, maybe 12 now, Presidio is operating off of pre-incorporated city flood maps. We have gone, and the importance of this is insurance rates by flood insurance in a town like Presidio is cost prohibitive to the public. So if we want to hit a home run with the public, how do we get it where A, they can buy insurance. I mean, to even get it. And the reason being is we don't have any maps. But we need to get the Army Corps of Engineers to reissue the maps after 20 years and come in and look at the improvements in the city of, we're dealing with 2 rivers, actually 2.5 if you count Cibolo Creek. We have the Rio Grande of Mexico falling in there, of course, we have the Rio Grande, and then Cibolo Creek. And so basically I've got a map that's just kind of shaded over and has a pay zone and a C zone. And you know, I think it's not good to see that. So, but we need to focus in on incorporating the Army Corps of Engineers to come in and make sure that our maps are updated. I would dare say the department's not. When was the last one? From the Alpine?
Don't even know.
They're older. Yeah, they're older than you.
Probably.
So that's why I wanted you to pay attention to this. If we really want to do something for the public, let's save them some money with their insurance. And then it's not such a big hit on FEMA if they do have insurance. Because, you know, if they get flooded out, what happens? FEMA comes in and costs everyone a lot of money. So I think that should be a very, very high priority when we start trying to do local planning, is let's see what the map says. Now, Presidio, we're pretty lucky. I've got another study I've got to put on about 2 years ago. Are you familiar with that one?
No.
Anyway, this is a piece of it. What's in the master plan, the city 2020 master plan, came from that study that the Rio Grande Council of Governments did, 10 or so, maybe just a little bit before Brad.
Okay.
But I do have a copy of that. I wish I would have put it on the display. But we have bits and pieces of information that you already were talking about this. You already got it. What we don't have is a big picture map that you can lay on the insurance or bank's desk and say, we're building it in a good spot.
Let me make sure that I capture, for those viewing virtually, did you hear everything that was said, or do we need to repeat? Carlos, I see your face. Could you hear it?
Not all of it.
Not all of it. Okay. Do you mind just kind of recapturing so we can make sure we have a recorder for AECOM?
Right.
Richard, is LiDAR also something that needs to be brought in?
Not in this particular question, not
Okay,
yet.
all right.
Thanks.
Okay.
So Mr. Brad, you said from Presidio. So he was asking about the financial burden it is on the community members to get this insurance in the first place, and them having outdated maps from pre-incorporation of the community, and how outdated they are, and emphasizing the need for updated maps, insurance maps, so that their community members can go ahead and get the insurance at an affordable rate.
They're called FEMA maps.
Yes. So I want to emphasize that all the regional flood planning group members that are here in person and online are listening to this, because this is kind of the exact feedback that we look for, and the group members should be listening to make sure that they incorporate it into the plan. So to assist you within this planning process, the group members and the technical consultants may be identifying your community as an area that needs an updated evaluation. So a floodplain management evaluation. So within this process, there may be funding that can help you, assist you to get updated an initial base maps, okay?
No, it's something that is furnished by the United States.
I know.
We shouldn't have to pay for it.
Right. So, but then it's through this process, there may be additional funding, or there may be other state financial assistance or from communities in that area that can all chip in together to kind of pay for the updated maps. That is something that is to be determined. I don't have an answer for you on that. but the outcome of these evaluations in this flood planning process can assist you in the long-term process of developing those specific FEMA rate insurance maps. Okay, so in this process, we can't produce regulatory maps for everybody, but the data that this group is collecting and the financial assistance that this group can provide and the helping your community just be identified as a problem point within the state that needs additional assistance. This is what this group is for, and again, the deliverable from this will assist your community to be able to go through the NFIP process and get those FEMA rate insurance maps.
I appreciate where you're going, but we've got all this stuff. What we don't have is a good FEMA map. I mean, I got 100-year flood studies, everything else that we did pay. Now I need the federal government to step up, take that, they got to make us a name map. I mean,
right.
That's it.
And so it's a several.
Can you help me find that person over at FEMA, because we've been looking for it for 10 years.
Yes.
And we hadn't found him yet.
Yes. Okay. So now redirecting a little bit, he was saying that he may have updated data, and he is looking to use that data then to get the regulatory rate insurance map from FEMA. There's a specific, we have a community assistance program at the Texas Water Development Board that will be able to assist you with specifically that problem, because their entire group is focused on, okay, you guys have your maps, we're gonna help you guys get through the rate insurance process, which does take a couple years, because there's a long study period, there's a long review period, and that is up to the federal government then to do. That's not something that at the state level we have any authority over, but we are here to assist you in that process. So I can most definitely put you in contact with our community assistance team at the Texas Water Development Board to help you deal with FEMA and go through that process.
And I guess what I'm telling you is we have done this time and time again and no maps.
Okay.
So I appreciate your efforts, don't get me wrong, but you have to understand the city of frustration. And I mean, we've had people go to court, FEMA's app, and it's just a vicious cycle of, well, we've got all the information. Well, we need somebody to put FEMA on a daggone map, we can give the bankers and the insurance company. That's where we're at. And we can be in and so I've got all that documentation for you to put in this plan. Because I realize about being in the plan, you don't get funding. So I've been around the block on this. But I just want to let you know what my primary frustration is in Presidio. And when I've been doing this for 12 years trying to get this map. And I've talked to Mark with maps are out of date. Alpine maps are out of date. So this entire rest of the region, I don't know what El Paso looks like. Maybe they got good maps. Did it? What year? You got the simple byway you all for a while. If we need some help on this, we don't have the big resources, of course, the population, things like that. But we do have significant water events. We just lost somebody over here in the drainage ditch here in Markham. I can tell there's Mother Nature always wins when it comes to water. And we've been lucky so far. But to be prepared for that, talking full circle again, that's why we need to have maps. That's why we need to have approvable locations for the insurance companies to properly insure property. We got them too. We got some bad places too, but that's what we need to identify. So we can have the growth of the city go to those safer places and I got a cheap lot. Well, yeah, kind of a rural, and they come to the city hall and say, well, you really may build it. You're in the middle of a farm. Oh, well, they told me I could, So buyer beware flood areas, there's always somebody to sell it to, and then you're stuck.
I think I just think the one thing, Brad, is just to remind ourselves that this is the first time that this initiative is going to be implemented. And so in terms of far-reaching implications, I think that would be a lofty goal to get to, but we've got to start the process. And so in terms of tempering expectations, I think that would probably be necessary to just put out there in terms of what we're hoping to achieve as we go through this.
Well, and then, I'm goal oriented, and this is a good goal to start. Everybody needs good things. Then that way, what can be insured, what can't be insured, where to build, not to build. And local studies don't stand up whenever you go into the insurance company. They want something, stamp on. So anyway, thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry. But if you've been chasing something circles for 12 years, you would understand why I'm here this week. Is to say one of our goals is everybody with blood mass. And we just have to invite more people into this on the federal level to help us achieve that. And if we don't talk to them, but if we call and say, hey, there's this one guy, he's really upset, then maybe we can enlist their participation in this process. And as we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad, for that. And just to kind of recap for the members online that might not have heard everything, and especially the floodplain group members online listening, he was emphasizing his concern and for the need for a good map as the foundation for this process, because that allows you to know where to build and where not to build. And then dealing with some of the maybe slower, to be honest, bureaucratic items that are frustrating for some communities. And so we are all listening and recognizing that the floodplain group members are able to continue to emphasize your concern throughout this process. At the end of this process, they'll have a chance to recommend, put forth together a list of recommendations to the Water Development Board, to the legislature, about what needs to change or what could be better to assist the local communities. So these group members are able to put your concern into writing in there as well. And also understanding that just dealing with the different, the slower process here at the board, I will reach out to the community assistance team to reach out to you and to see if there can be any resolution and expedition on your project to work with FEMA to get these rate maps. Because those regulatory maps do end up being the financial difference for a lot of communities.
I would be interested. I'd like to throw out Betsy challenges to the other members. Don't see what condition or how old your FEMA maps are. And then that way, maybe don't discover that, oh my God, these are 40 years old. And all this flood work and stuff that's been done to our community, including Presidio, and it's not reflected in the flood map. So anyway, so that they can hear this, just tell everybody to check your local flood map, see what condition they're going to be.
It doesn't necessarily matter how old they are because they were wrong when they were drawn.
That's probably.
So the in-person discussion was just challenging the group members to look up their own local communities rate maps and see the year that they were developed in as a challenge and kind of compare and evaluate that.
Hi, I'm Rowan from the Defense on this paper. I just have two questions. The first is how often will these things happen in this first cycle? What can we expect out of that?
Would you like me to have?
Yes.
Gilbert, would you like to, or Brian, would you all like to inform the group of our schedule we're looking at in terms of our meetings? And if not, I'll say it, and then Gilbert, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at our next meeting to be August the 5th. So Gilbert, I
Yes.
see that you have your microphone. Do you want to go ahead and make that announcement?
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and what our plans are is to have our first group meeting with the regional flood plan group, with the regional flood planning group on August 5th. And from there on, looking forward, we're looking to have updates every 8 weeks, looking forward in developing this particular flood plan. And as well as that, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Gilbert, go ahead.
And included in that, and we're developing right now, we are working on surveys to be submitted to the region. You know, requesting responses like the public has responded right now on flooding issues and all that. And so that's right now, that's in the works. And, you know, we put a team together that's going to assist us with that. We've got Barracuda Public Relations, and I've also got a team of experts that's going to help us put this together. So we do have a set of meetings that we do have moving forward with this.
And Abby, I think to help the public, AECOM has done a phenomenal job thus far in terms of setting the stage. So we will have these meetings once our website should be operational by the end of next week. For those who attend the meeting, if you have your email address on there, we'll be sending out the notifications. But on our website, we'll have the calendar so you can see when the meetings are occurring. And then what we're anticipating on doing is having it at least every one meeting in El Paso and then moving it to another location. So that way we can make sure that we're being responsive to the entire region, and it's not only in one location where people have a greater chance to attend in person. But at this moment in time, looking at the Open Meetings Act and looking at how there are rules available to those jurisdictions that have multiple counties, we are going to keep this hybrid approach, so that way you all can attend the meeting virtually or in person.
My second question is, will there be data collection as part of this planning cycle?
Absolutely. The question was, will there be data collection and mapping in this first cycle? In this first cycle, there's actually a huge emphasis on the data collection side of things, because this is the first cycle going forward. So it's kind of a all hands on deck approach to reach out to the local communities, between the floodplain group members, between the technical consultants, and if you guys know of anybody else as well that may have updated study maps that they can contribute to this process, they can submit them to the technical consultants and incorporate them into this plan. I can't emphasize enough how much this data collection portion and identifying the areas that need updated studies in this first cycle are. Yes, sir.
So talking about the map, Gary Mitchell, I'm EMC for Presidio County. So with the maps, if the state, I know this is a state effort as opposed to a federal effort, do you think at some point there may be more accurate floodplain maps that the state could share with local staff, even though it may not work with the insurance, at least gives us an idea, okay, you know, that people know shouldn't be here or whatever. And I know this goes on to also projects that you can identify those maps to alleviate some floodplain or flood-prone areas. So is that kind of what this is all about? I mean, is that what we're headed to?
Yes, you said your name was Gary?
Gary,
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Gary had asked a question about at the end of this process, is placed for the local communities to be able to access these updated data maps, even if they're not regulatory for the rate insurance maps for FEMA, and as well as project information as well. And the answer is absolutely yes. That is kind of an overarching goal as well. Once we collect from a region level all the GIS, the map layers, updated map layers that we have, reach out to all the communities that have given us updated data. Rolling that into the state flood plan, we will eventually be putting out the statewide map that is updated. It won't be regulatory, but the most updated study maps that we have across the state. And all of that data will be accessible by all the local communities around the state for you guys to use, to plan for, to plan around, and to plan projects around. Working with the in terms of the project side, there's in the middle of this process, once you kind of identify the areas that do have studies done and identifying potential solutions, potential projects to help mitigate flood risk in those areas. When those projects are identified in that kind of realm, that's when the technical consultants are involved in terms of identifying the projects, evaluating them, and the group members, the entire all 12, we're up to 12 members, sorry, we're up to 13 members now, aren't we?
I believe so, yes.
13 members recommending those projects, saying, hey, this is an actual need in our region. It's a viable project, and we want to make sure it's at the top of the list if people are looking to mitigate flood risk in that area. So that's kind of in the middle of this process for the identifying of projects phase. But at the end, yes, all this data will be available to the local communities to use.
And I'm assuming they're going to be a lot more accurate than what we had. That's what I'm hearing.
To be completely honest, I don't know. I don't know if there's updated studies for specific areas. There may be, there may not. So that's the responsibility of the technical consultant that the region has chosen. That's the responsibility of the members getting the word out to all their communities that they represent, saying, does anybody have any updated maps? That's the responsibility of you guys talking to your community members as well, saying, do any of my local officials have any floodplain maps, and getting them to our group and to our technical consultant to compile all of that.
What are the challenges with flood maps is that they're a snapshot. They're only good on that day. So I encourage everybody to focus on the process of how we build those and how we update them rather than that static product, because the minute they're printed, their expiration date is getting closer every day. So, the process, everybody. Yes, or yeah, exactly. So anyway,
Jeff,
process is what I would encourage everybody to focus on.
for those in the virtual world, Jeff's just reminding everyone to think more about the process of how you update the maps rather than the end product, because as soon as you finish the final touches on that product, it's already obsolete to a certain extent. So am I correct?
Yeah, well, they're growing old quickly.
They grow old quickly. So maybe that should be our focus in terms of how is it we want to capture the data. So I would assume so we can have that consistency and understanding on what it takes to put that together.
Every spot is different. Some places grow older faster, but that's the point. That's why we're having a process that engages the public, engages the professional sector, build something that can be updated. And it's a process that's ongoing. Our regional water planning groups, it's ongoing. We've been doing it forever, it seems like.
Yes.
Gary brought up a really good idea about it. Okay, we develop our maps, not from the top down, but like you say, bottom up. And then through the state legislature, they regulate the insurance industry and get them to recognize the work of this whole planning groups and things like that in lieu of an old FEMA map, the latest information for you to set your rates on are going to come from the state, not the federal government. So that's something we can think about and perhaps talk to our elected officials about. But I like that idea, Gary. We can't get it from the feds, let's do it as a state.
At least there's good information for the locals to know what's a potential problem, what is.
And if you're interested, I've got all kinds of flood studies, type stuff, and I'll be happy to share.
So I think that the gist of the conversation is let's just maximize on this opportunity to use, as Richard said, the bottom-up approach. And if we can't rely on the federal government to provide us with reliable data, then let's do it out of necessity through this planning effort. And I think the only way that this can be accomplished, though, is that if we have that communication with our technical consultants, with the planning group, and that will give us an opportunity to have information that we can use in a more readily fashion. Anyone else? Is there anyone from who's listening in or watching us? Does anyone have a question they would want to raise or comment for Richard or anyone else?
I think, Annette, on our end over here, I think we have a couple of questions we want to ask and maybe get some feedback from everybody. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris and Brian with some questions we might have for the group.
Yes, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, we heard a lot of what was said in the audience, and thank you for repeating it and rephrasing it so we could hear most of what was said. Just to comment a little bit on Brad's comment at the beginning about the age of their maps in Presidio. TWDB currently put out a survey for the different regional flood planning groups to fill out. And one of the questions on that survey was asking about, was there any certain criteria that they should, additional criteria they should consider when allocating funds to different regions, if these different funds are available or additional funding is available. And we put out some responses to this question and some other survey questions, which we had sent to Annette for the flood planning groups review, the committee's review. These questions are due tomorrow, but one of our suggestions was you could look at the available stream miles that are mapped. But one thing that Brad brought up is that you could also look at the age of the floodplains. So maybe they're mapped, but maybe they're 40 years old. So I would like to add that to our response in that survey that we're going to send to TWDB that's due tomorrow. And I'd like to just remind the Flood Planning Committee that you have that for review. And it is a tight turnaround. I think we just sent it out maybe yesterday or the day before, but it is due tomorrow. So we're asking for any feedback on those responses by the end of the day today. We realize it's pretty close to that right now. So if you don't have time today, but you can get to it first thing tomorrow, we ask that you just let us know, hey, we can't get to it today, but first thing tomorrow morning, we'll have some responses to you. As long as we can turn it in tomorrow by the deadline, that's our goal. So I just wanted to make that point. And then I also had a question. I'll hand it over to Brian in a minute to talk about a survey that we've put together that we're also requesting feedback on, so that the public, much like at these meetings, instead of coming up and talking in front of a group or online, you can fill out one of these surveys online, and you can tell us, hey, yes, I experienced this type of flooding in my yard, or I see it on my commute to work every day. So we are putting together an interactive survey, and that has also been sent to the flood planning group for review, and we're trying to finalize that here very shortly. So Brian will talk about that in just 1 second. But I just wanted to also ask Richard, could you talk a little bit about the formation of the subcommittees and the process of who can vote on those subcommittees and who can attend those subcommittees? Because my understanding is you have to be a regional flood planning group member to be voting on decisions from those flood planning groups, from those subcommittee meetings once they're formed. But I wasn't totally clear on who can attend those subcommittee meetings, who can be in the subcommittee, even if they cannot vote.
So for those here in person, that speaking was one of the technical consultants from AECOM, recognizing that one of the criteria for additional funding may be the age of the floodplain remaps of that particular region may need more funding. The second part to Chris's question was about subcommittees and the regional flood planning group members. So Chris and the members, to answer that, that will be spelled out and needs to be followed by the bylaws that were adopted. Remember that all subcommittees, all they can have authority to do are to recommend, or to review and kind of guide the technical consultants, but all major actions or decisions have to be made to the entire group, and the subcommittees give recommendations to the entire group. But the subcommittees can be built of any number. I believe there may be a set number, but I think it can be kind of any size, let's say 5 people or so, unless you choose a specific region subcommittee. Let's say one subcommittee might focus on the Big Bend region. If it's a regional subcommittee, you have to have one person from each interest category on that subcommittee representing all interests. But if the subcommittee is for the entire region, you don't have to follow that particular clause. But I would go back and review the bylaws to answer that question.
Okay, thanks. And Brian, do you want to say anything additional about the survey that we sent out?
Right. Yeah, sure. I wanted to just emphasize and encourage the public, and just to say that this flood plan is for you, and that our primary goal, as Richard mentioned, at this stage is to collect as much data as we can about specific needs, issues, and ideas that you might have. This includes members of the public and any stakeholders, other stakeholders that may be identified through this process. And we've been developing a survey to collect your feedback on specific issues. So through this, we've invited the members of the regional flood planning group to provide initial feedback by next Tuesday, if possible. And once we have that live online, it will look like it will be a form that we can fill out online that links to a map, a web viewer, where you can actually add data, spatial data, to let us know where specifically you might be having issues with respect to flooding, as well as any projects that you might be aware of that are not within our current data set. And yeah, so in addition to that, we're also going to be distributing a PDF survey that will also go out to the individual communities as an alternative option to the online survey. So just wanted to mention that that's in the works, and we recently provided a copy to the planning group members for feedback.
Just to sum that up for the public listening, thank you, Brian. So he was from AECOM, the technical consultants. So they are developing an online survey or a PDF survey for the public and community officials to fill out, looking for any updated data or to give any local input that you have. So if you've given your email on the sign-in sheet today, be on the lookout for that email that, by Brian's indication, that should be coming out next week.
it's under the same.
Oh, Brad, I have your email address.
Just
yes,
to clarify that, Richard, the timeline for that, we were submitted it to have get feedback from the planning group next week, and then I estimate it will be ready for the public in the coming weeks, but we don't have a specific date for that yet.
Okay.
Have they sent out a survey about this before?
No. We're going to be.
About somebody else.
No, Brad, not yet. All right, thank you. Sal, do you have a comment?
I have a question that relates to the survey under, the flood hydrology for the Rio Grande. And we understand that the maps that were prepared by FEMA, they were done with the technicality that the levees of the river do not exist. And since we have a consultant that is not affiliated with FEMA, how will they approach that particular point when they do the study for the flood, affecting the areas surrounding the river levees? Are they going to take those in consideration, or are they going to follow the same technical, I guess, restriction with FEMA that they're doing their hydrological modeling without the levees?
Yeah, this is Chris Wright with AECOM. I can help answer that question. That's a very good question. The reason why the FEMA models assume that the levees are not there is because the levees have not been through the FEMA certification process, which requires several checkboxes to be checked, to put it simply. And one of those checkboxes is a interior drainage study, which basically studies the flooding patterns when the levees are in place, and studies the interior flooding, assuming that the levees are there and that the outfalls that are there are open or closed, depending on the assumptions in that analysis. And we actually recently completed an analysis. I was the project manager for AECOM that completed that interior drainage analysis. So we do have models and mapping that assume that the levees are there, and we can work with those models, with those assumptions. And so that will be an option. I can't say for certain, what the final risk maps will show, but off the top of my head, I would say that we'll probably have the similar areas that are inundated, but we'll be able to shade them in a certain way that say, okay, these are the floodplains if the levees are not there. And so you'll be able to distinguish what are the floodplains, and FEMA does that as well. They have it marked as these are the levees, assuming that the floodplains that the levees are not there. So you should be able to distinguish between those two sets of studies. How we're going to do that, and how we can make it clear, that's going to be one of our goals of this study. But we do have the abilities to do that, because like I said, we just finished a study, the interior drainage study, which assumes that the levees are in place. So we will consider that.
Thank you. I understand how complicated this process may be. I've actually have sort of served on the Citizens Advisory Board at the IBWC for on and off for the last 12 years. And I've kept alive that one issue, which is the accreditation and the certifications of the levees, knowing how important it is. Of course, I'm on this board representing industry. I'm working with the El Paso Association of Builders, with development focus groups, and looking at these FEMA maps. And you see the way FEMA presented it, it's only one option, that the levees do not exist, and almost the entire huge sectors of land in the Upper Valley and the Mission Valley and have been put under flood, and it would make it extremely difficult to get them out of the flood if these maps were to go effective, because it changes the entire effort that the IBWC is doing to accredit these levees. It will become a Clomar-Lomar process after these maps become effective. I mean, it's like a race against the clock. So I kind of heard your answer, but I'm not so clear that if the maps that we are going to generate through this regional flood mapping group that is going to follow the same model as FEMA or not. And it's not entirely just the interior drainage studies. We still have portions of the levees that are not complete. We still have openings that are not even under design, like the Conatillo and the Vinton crossings. We still have a lot of unfunded designs by FEMA. I mean, we had spent the last 10 years and over $200 million to rectify, most of these levees, but they're still a long journey to finish. So this assumption that the levees do not exist and they do not offer any level of protection is honestly is very harsh, and we should not follow that same model, in my opinion.
Well, we understand it is a very controversial subject, and it does affect a lot of people. And we understand how important of an issue and how complicated it can be. And so that's why one of the reasons I asked about these subcommittees that we'll be setting up as part of these regional flood planning group meetings. And we've suggested 5 subcommittees at this time, and one of those is to focus on the Rio Grande main stem flooding. And so we would value opinions like yours and people who feel strongly about certain subjects and have a lot of knowledge about that subject to join those subcommittees, and we can really get into the details and really try to have the biggest impact as a result of those subcommittees. So that's going to be our goal.
Thank you. And Annette, add my name to that subcommittee, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You'll be the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Your information is all very good, but over the top.
Yes. The general public, yes, ma'am.
Over the top. My main concern is the flooding that we had 2 weeks ago.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe that the city and county should by now have made a safer place. It's not the first time that someone has been swept away. The first time we were fortunate and blessed that the utility company was able to hold the vehicle in place until they got the person. That should have been a wake-up call for the city and county administrators to know that they need to address that problem. Even one bridge on one of the street would be sufficient. At one time, it was an open road, was refurbished, redone, and he took his property and closed it, which I don't think it was his property. So that left all those people that live on that side of town without access to medical care. What if during the flood someone was having a heart attack, a stroke, or needed medical attention or any kind of attention? How could they get there? They couldn't. There is no way when something like this happens for any personnel to get across that creek. I was born and raised here, and I was not completely inclined when I was growing up. But now I see, I'm at the end now, but I see all these people, young people, putting their lives in danger. I'm very sorry for this gentleman that passed away. Is it gonna take another 10 people to get swept away before the administration? I understand about your maps and all the process. You're the planning. If they go for you, we don't get a bridge in 10 years. I understand it. I worked for the government when I was working, and I know how small the wheels turn. But this is something that our administrators should be focusing on and addressing immediately, not 10, 20 years from now.
Would you mind if I just let the group know what you said in case they can't hear?
I'm sorry.
Let me just repeat what you said so I can tell the others that are listening virtually. So just for those of you who may not know, 2 weeks ago, there was severe flooding that occurred in Marfa and Presidio, all the Tri-County area. A gentleman was crossing the road and he was swept away. Unfortunately, they could not be able to locate him. And so he did pass away. And I believe that I was able to read the story in the Sentinel, and obviously it's a tragic situation. And tell me your name, ma'am. Your name? So Rosie Garcia is concerned with whose responsibility is it? Is it city, county? What can be done short term, not long term, in terms with regard to public safety and ensuring that something like this won't happen again? And I think we have one more comment as well.
Well, even in section of county, there's no way out. When the creek comes down, there's no way out. Like you said, the police whoever wrote there, they would have blocked. Now, the people on the hill,
Okay. And tell me, what is your name? Ovelia Bowman? Yes, okay, so Ovelia Bowman was also talking about in her area near where the situation occurred, that once the creek fills, there's no way to get out. And so obviously that's a huge impact to the community in terms of them being able to leave if it's necessary for their safety. And there's private property that's encroaching on their ability to leave because they can't trespass. And so these are the concerns that are coming directly out of the Marfa community. And I know that Mr. Mitski's here from Presidio County EMC, and so this may be a local situation, but I think definitely for AECOM, with some focus on our communities, we definitely can get you some information, data that you all would be able to provide for that would be necessary to help address the situation. And from the council government side, I think we can definitely look to see who it is that we can work with. I don't know if this is all specifically Marfa County, TxDOT, but we have to, that's where I think we would need to do our first step to see who would be responsible for that with the funding and to see where we can maybe locate the funding to try to address that.
The city limits.
Okay.
The charges are all in the city limits.
So I live in Alpine or outside Alpine, and my neighborhood is also behind the creek. So I've been stuck at home multiple times in the last 20 years. So maybe, just part of our mapping process is to identify all those neighborhoods, because I know there's one in Fort Davis as well. I bet there's one in Valentine.
And so AECOM, Jeff brought up a good point that perhaps we can definitely take a closer look at those communities that are impacted, who are residing near creeks that are unable to vacate their residence if flooding does occur. And so I think it's probably happening more often than one would think. And I would think that would be helpful information for you all to incorporate as well.
And I think it should be.
We'll take a look at that.
I'm sorry, Gary?
I said it, and I think it should be a higher priority because it's a safety issue. And that being said, there's also the community of Condelaria and Mendoza that get isolated the same way when the river comes up. So there's a lot of places that need to be addressed.
So I think maybe perhaps in other parts of Texas, they may think that we don't experience the same type of flooding that they do, but here in this public meeting, we've already received information from the stakeholders that when flooding does occur, it can be severe, and safety should be really at the primary concern in terms of what our focus should be on in terms of looking at how this might be mitigated. And for all of those who are here right now, there is a hazard mitigation meeting that will be occurring at 6 p.m. tonight. And they will be addressing, or they will be asking for input. And I don't know if you all have the time to attend that meeting as well. It'll be in this facility, but you can definitely inform Mr. DeSantis of the same concerns, because we're going to incorporate it into our hazard mitigation plan. And that's definitely something that's used when there is flooding, and if FEMA is required to come in, they will use that document against it to look and see what has been addressed. Thank you. Richard, anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Anyone else from the group virtually? Any comments, questions? No? Okay, Gary?
One more quick comment as far as the focus on maybe flood warning devices. And I say that because this incident here in Marfa, the rain actually occurred like 2 miles away. So, you know, we had very little rain. So people weren't really looking.
So was it on their radar? Okay.
Call came in, it was kind of like.
Yes.
But we had off of 160.
I'm still here.
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Watershed starts up there, drains.
Okay.
So that's where our issues were at, when they had that 5 or 6 inches of rain in a short period of time there. And it took several hours for it to get tomorrow. So, you know, a warning system of some sort would be another nice focus. We can't remediate it, at least we can.
Okay. And AECOM, Gary was just mentioning that at the least, short-term flood warning signals, at the least, if that can be something that's looked at. And even though that these may not be items that the plan will take care of, if anyone in the group is listening to this and you have resources, you have ideas on how this can be addressed, please forward them on to me, and I can pass that along to the government, the local governments here. I think one of the benefits of having these kinds of groups is that we can have some other byproducts that occur, and this might be one of them where we can help the citizens of Marfa and Presidio County address the concerns that they just raised right now. Okay, well then I think that will wrap up the meeting for today. Dave, Jeff, anything? Omar? No? Okay. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much for attending. I appreciate it. I think this is a really good group that was here today for our second pre-planning meeting. And then again, our next one will be August 5th. And correct me if I'm wrong, Gilbert, we set the time at 9 a.m. What time did we set our meetings at? I'm trying to remember.
We were trying to set them at the same time you had your regular meetings at. So whatever time you guys want to set up, I don't think we've actually set one up.
You can't make them on Thursdays?
Can't make it on, yeah, I plan a vacation for that one.
Oh, that's okay. That part's all right. Chair Martinez, the time to be determined, or do you want to say 9? Okay, so 9 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Central, August the 5th. And
Where is it?
it'll be a virtual meeting still. As of September 1st, they'll start going in person. Okay. All right. Thank you, folks.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you all.